For those with good taste.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? It's your boys from For Those With Good Taste. I'm Matt. He's Lenny.
Hello.
And we've got quite a bit to share with you. Before we get into anything, need you to hit the likes. Need you to do something in the comments. Do something. Insult me? I don't know.
Can I stop you real quick, Matt? I read this thing the other day. It was like a comment on somebody's YouTube page, and it was kind of a negative thing, but it was like, why does everybody always ask us before we've watched the episode to like it? Like, how do I know if I fucking like it yet? And I want to just say to the people out there,
address that shit, dude.
How about you just stick around, right? See if you like it, and then like it at the end. We're just saying preemptively, think about liking it. About a half an hour from now, when this video ends, or this audio episode ends, think about throwing a like on there. Think about going to our Instagram for those with good taste, or our Twitter at Good Taste Live, and just saying, hey, what's up, man? That was a good episode. Just try that.
Man, that was beautiful.
I tried, man.
You know what? Just copy and paste what he said. Do it in the comments and make sure you hit the subscribe button, because in a world where there's so much to talk about, we're trying to narrow down a couple things. Some great fight announcements, some great fight talk from this weekend. And honestly, man, I've just been waiting to get in here just to jump into the hot goss with you.
Dude, it seems like every week we're coming in here with more and more goss, too.
Yeah, we're like a couple of schoolgirls on the gossip train, dude.
Just the school bus, probably.
Short bus, if you could say that.
I don't know if that's in these days, dude.
I am in that short bus. So,
you know who's out, though?
There's a couple of people that are out.
Paulo Costa.
Botticina.
Rehab.
Do you think he was sober when we all found out that he wasn't going to make it? Because he is quoted as being ill from complications with COVID.
As we do know, my man has struggled with his addiction to wine, to the vino. Him and LeBron James share the same addiction.
I think Sharon Stone, too.
Basic instinct was to drink wine, that lady.
I think that's everybody's basic instinct.
He is, in fact, actually, when they say ill, I read Erlewani mentioned he has the flu, not the COVID.
Oh, okay. I've been reading too many headlines.
He's hoping that the fight only gets pushed back 2 weeks, so we don't really have to worry about rebooking this.
2 weeks, huh?
Yeah, we're looking at May 1st or May 8th.
Yeah, because it's originally scheduled for April 17th, which is right around the corner. And hopefully they can get a quick turnaround time on that, because the last time we saw Botticina in the ring, he didn't have such a great time.
I beg to differ, Matt. What if he liked getting hit from the back?
I think somebody had a good time, and it's really up for grabs who it was at that
To some
night.
people, that was a great night.
It was probably a better night for him, because he was like, you know what, I'm just going to go back to drinking wine.
Yeah.
Like, there's some silver linings.
Let's get lubricated, am I right?
Don't ever tell me let's get lubricated, okay?
Try to get lubed up.
You threaten me with a good time, and I'm pretty sure that's a Tom Brady quote.
It is.
Okay, I thought so.
So the real news coming out of this weekend, we got a new finisher in the world of MMA. It's called the eye poke of doom.
Dude, nasty. It's like a 3-dimensional eye poke.
Where does this weekend? So Belal Muhammad, Leon Edwards, they fought this weekend. They were having quite the war until, unfortunately, to me, just if I'm saying, and I want to ask your perspective.
Sure.
One of the most uncomfortable instances in my 15 years of MMA fandom that I've probably ever had,
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Where does it
100%.
rank for you?
It's up there, man. And you know what's funny? We're in a sport where we're 100% okay seeing guys get flatlined in some cases. You see a guy take a head kick. Who doesn't love the Alistair Overeem knockout from Francis Ngannou?
Yep.
When we talk about uncomfortable moments, the DC eye poke with Stipe is one that comes to mind when you're thinking about how bad that one is.
Yeah.
Man, there's a lot that come to mind. But when I think about this one was really bad, because there was almost 2 fingers in his eye at this point. And it is if you're looking at some of the still images, I can watch a guy get knocked out all day long. I am getting more and more unable to watch some of these gory moments where these guys are getting poked in the eye.
The close-up picture that Dana White posted, it took me so long to figure out what was going on. Because I was looking at the thumb, because I had thought that he got hooked possibly with the hand coming out. It was like it was his forehand on a kick, right? So I thought the thumb had hooked. But what actually happened is you see his thumb and it's in his forehead. It's in his forehead. But what's actually happening is down lower, a finger is pulling the bottom of his eyelid out.
Okay, you can see my discomfort as we're talking about it. That's where I say it's 3-dimensional, because you see the thumb, you see the other eye. If you look behind it, it almost looks like he's getting a knuckle in there, too.
Yeah, dude. It's like when somebody's going to grab your nose and be like, I got your nose. But he went like,
Sir,
I got your eyeball.
You're not supposed to actually take my eyeball.
Yeah.
Like, leave my eyeball. It was uncomfortable to watch. And even the aftermath, you hear Belal scream. And that is a gut-wrenching scream. To me, it was very difficult to take in.
I'll tell you, and I hope I don't lose my man card on this one, but I had to turn it off, man. Like,
Ooh.
First of all, it was disgusting. Like, the eye thing was disgusting, but I've become kind of accustomed to that. I've seen some really bad ones along the way. But you brought it up, man. What happened for me was, like, that reaction was just so uncomfortable to me.
It's raw.
Because it was real. Yeah. It's like, so a couple things, because you're right. Like, first of all, there is not a sport in this world that is more real than the consequences of MMA. And I think this was just one of those instances. And the real thing that made me turn it off was, like, I felt so bad for him, man. Like, the way he had reacted, and I've never seen somebody really react to an eye poke like that. I've just never seen it. It felt like he was going through in his mind what we would all be going through. I think we all understood in that moment that he was like, I might never see again. And
I've lost my eyesight.
And that just felt so raw and real to me that, like, as Herb Dean, who, man, I think we got on refs, and, like, we had a whole rant last week about scoring and the system that didn't get seen in the world. But we don't spend enough time sometimes saying positive things, and he gets the most positive out of anybody. But this is why, right? Like, because he's like, Belal, like, I need you to take a breath.
I need you to calm down.
Calm down. Like, the doctor's got to look at your eye. I know it's bad, but, like, I need you to calm down and open your eye. And it almost felt like he did bring, like...
He brought my stress level down.
Yeah, so, like, I just felt like I was watching somebody go through the inner turmoil of, like, this is the biggest opportunity of my life. This is a huge fight. I stepped up on 3 weeks' notice, and now I can't even fucking see. I didn't get out of the second round, and I might never see again out of my right eye. And you know, like, it was breathtaking shit, and not in a good way. Like, it really, like I said, I turned it off. I couldn't watch it.
It felt like a sour moment
Mm-hmm.
to end the event when you knew that so much was kind of riding on it. Not only for Belal, it being again a huge step up in competition for him. He's fighting the number 3 ranked guy at that division.
Looking okay, you know, he wasn't winning, but, like, I thought he looked pretty competitive. Yeah,
it looked good, and for Leon Edwards, it was a time for him to shake off the cobwebs and finally get in there.
That's
and
size
put in a great
difference.
performance. Oh,
I didn't expect it like that.
Leon's a big boy.
Yeah, and Bilal's not a big boy. I think Bilal should be at 155 probably.
I think
got a thick head though.
He's done a great job at being able to really utilize. There you go again,
gotcha.
Dude. You Duolingo, man. You're going bilingual on us.
Stopped like a month ago.
Terrible. You're still better than me. When we look at Belal, he's really gotten a lot of success at 170 pounds, just being this guy who can grapple, who can strike when it's needed to, but really being able to dictate a lot of fights.
Yeah.
And we saw very quickly Leon Edwards just was not having it. Big guy, and for being out of the octagon for so long, didn't really seem like he missed a beat.
He looked great. But let's talk about the fallout of all of this.
The aftermath.
We have some of the worst PR in MMA.
I thought you were going to say for those with good taste. I would say
we've said some questionable things. But they have, man, like, nobody's talking to these fighters and just telling them, like last week it was all the stuff with Aljo, right? Like, just hurting himself left and right. And then this week, it's like Leon Edwards comes out of this fight and is talking like he fucking won. Bro, you went 7 minutes in a 25-minute fight and you're acting like you dominated this guy the whole fucking time. Like, it's just insane. He doesn't come off as humble. 2 times now, I thought about this, Matt, while I was thinking about, like, getting ready for this episode, right? There's 2 times in FTWG history that me and you have recorded episodes and the quality has just been, not us, but the audio quality or something was bad.
Sometimes technology can't handle the heat that we're delivering in here.
Exactly. And we weren't able to put it out. In both of those times were me and you shitting on, well, last week you shitted on Leon's life. I actually defended him a little bit. But then previously we talked about
We've gone hard
him being an idiot.
Yeah.
This, again, I hope this gets out there. Please let everything go well.
Dude, don't you start saying anything right now.
Because this fucking dummy, dude, excuse my French or English. And he's
English, dude. He speaks the Queen's English. It's completely different.
That's a hot topic these days. The Queen's English. So he's like out here talking like he won the fight, calling for a title shot. He's proved this. He's proved that, and it's like, dude, Sure, you've proved it. You probably have enough to get a title shot as it is, but you didn't beat this man.
Nope.
You were the reason that the fight ended.
Yep.
Like, you should be the loser. If anybody lost this fight, it would be you. A person lost his title last week for something that was less critical to me in the grand scheme of things than this is.
We talk about intentional DQs, things like that, where you're doing something that you know should end this fight in the other person's favor. I heard twice.
He did it once. He poked him.
I heard twice. No, despite the fact that he poked him already, I heard twice. Keep your hands down. Keep your fingers down. Mm-hmm. To me, third strike, you're out, man. Yeah. Like, there's no way that you're allowed. And I feel like every time we record something, not only on Leon Edwards, but also talking about at what point do fighters need to take responsibility for something that they've done with poor technique? If your hands are out and you're poking a guy once, twice, 3 times, and you're still being called a no, and you got the nerve to talk about how you won the fight?
Yeah.
Get out of here, man.
I'm not even saying he needs a rematch. At this point, I'm on the rematch Belal camp.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You got to prove yourself now.
Yeah, like I'm on the, and it might have been, I think he was going to win that fight. I think he may have even stopped
I don't care. I don't care. You poked this man in the eye, and then you came out here talking like you're the guy who's going to fight for the title next. You can't do that.
Yeah, no.
Rematch Belal.
Yeah,
rematch Belal.
I think at this point, give the rematch to Belal. The division's already moving on. We can get on to the next big topic here because the division has moved on. We have a title fight that has been booked in the welterweight division. It is a rematch, but it's not the one Leon wanted.
No.
But it's funny because the guy who kind of told us from the beginning, like, this dude Leon's a chump, like 3 pieces of soda. Jorge Masvidal gets rebooked to fight Kamaru Usman.
Full camp.
On a full camp. This is going to be in April 24th, a few days past 420. Hopefully people are still having fun, partying it up at that point.
I know I'll still be rocking.
UFC 261. It's added on to a fight that already had 2 other title fights on it.
That we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Zhang Wei Li versus Rose Namajunas. And then we also get Jessica Andrade versus Valentina Shevchenko.
Really quick, and this just popped into my head, and we'll spend 1 minute on this, I promise. When are we going to stop saying that people are pay-per-view draws too? Like, I love Masvidal, and he is legitimately a draw, right? I love Izzy, and Izzy is legitimately a draw. Izzy did 800,000 buys 2 weeks ago. That's good.
That is good.
It is good. But you had to put him on a card with 2 other title fights.
Oh, he's stacked.
And he didn't crack a mill.
Nope.
So I'll look at Masvidal, and you have to put Masvidal in the 2 other title fights on it, 2 really, really good champions underneath that. On top of the fact that it also has the gimmick going for it that it's going to be the first fight in front of a full crowd.
Yeah, shoulder-to-shoulder crowd.
I like Jorge Masvidal, and I think he'll break a mill on this probably. I think this card will break a mill. But there are just so few guys out there that are the Conor McGregors and the John Joneses, I would say, is in that league, that you can book a card with them at the top of it and not have to book it
supplement
to this level.
With something else.
You know, I just it kind of popped into my head a little bit there. It's just it's funny to look at.
It's a great take, and I would almost go to the background of this fight because Masvidal, being the pay-per-view draw that he is coming off of a loss against Usman. So maybe you're hoping that putting him on there on the docket with these other 2 title fights, you're hopefully supplementing him with a little bit more buzz. Hey, this is worth watching. He's also got a full camp. When I look at the Izzy pay-per-view, Izzy was on a hot train. Had just knocked out Bottacini and was looking to get champ
He's the hottest property in MMA. And if he had and I will amend my statement and say, with Izzy specifically, you would have had to, the next fight, you wouldn't need to do that, I don't think. If he had won the title, he would have been in a stratosphere that allowed him not to do that. But I just can't really think of, like, Conor never got that kind of help on his cards, did he?
No.
I guess the Eddie Alvarez one, if I'm thinking back in retrospect, did have 3 title fights on it. It had Joanna and it had Tyron Woodley on it.
Sure, but then let's look at the numbers gap between 800,000 compared to 1.4 million.
Yeah.
The numbers kind of speak for themselves and the difference of stardom there.
Not everybody's Conor McGregor.
Not everybody's Conor McGregor, but I do think that it's fair to say that, Jorge Masvidal is, Israel Adesanya, they are kind of the guys who are holding the torch at this point. They are the guys who are needing to bring in the amount of money that they need to really keep this hype train going. We've talked a lot about how the UFC has really kind of stood out during the pandemic. Now they're putting on a great event that's going to be in Jacksonville, Florida, and it's going to have the full capacity that we've been missing for about a year and a half now. Hopefully it can deliver. because that does add a little bit more pressure, but maybe
Do you
we get a
think-
little bit more juice.
Is the juice worth the squeeze? Thank you for saying that, because I was going to literally say that anyway. So
It's kind of like
is the juice worth the squeeze, Matt? Is the risk of 15,000 people packed shoulder to shoulder, not spaces in between them, not gaps for families, things like that, is it worth it? At this point, you would have had baseball already starting up in Texas with full stadium. The Rangers are going to be paying with full stadium.
Yep.
The Texas Rangers, Matt.
Yeah, no, thanks for saving me on that one. Nobody cares about hockey.
And we're also going to have, like, I said this to you earlier. I have no idea what it is. I think it's like monster trucks or
The
something.
best part was I was like, it's probably a NASCAR event. You were like, I think it's a monster truck. And I was like, if it's got Gravedigger, same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same exact thing.
And
dude.
only one guy could really come out and be like, I'm going to break the pandemic. And it's fucking Gravedigger. Dude. Well, that's oddly appropriate, actually.
I mean,
He's been busy.
more busy than we'd like him to be, unfortunately.
Hopefully he's not busy after this event, though, Matt.
Well, let's hope that he's taken a turn in reverse, right? Let's hope that this is an event that there seems to be a lot of pressure on it. But, props to Dana White for just thinking to himself, hey, states are starting to open up. This is an opportunity for us to take advantage of the pay-per-view buys, but then also be able to engage what a live gate's going to look like for
So
us.
do you feel that way? Do you think this is a good idea? Are you with this idea? Do you care? I mean, you can tell me if you
At
don't
this
care.
point, I'm certainly not against it. At this point, I mean, we're a year and a half in and we've got people still wearing masks under their nose. So if we haven't gotten it right by now, we're not going to.
Yeah, I don't want to be on my soapbox here, but I've 100% turned my corner on this too. And anybody's entitled to their own opinion. And I think the big part of this is like, Florida's already in a state of, to my understanding, talking to people who've been down there and
I've
stuff.
seen videos of the beaches.
Yeah, well, I've seen the clubs are nobody's masked. They're all on top of each other. Pretty much it seems like in Florida, you don't wear a mask and the old people stay inside. And I feel really bad for people who have to live out some of their final years stuck inside of a house. But it's up to, unfortunately, like freedom of will, I think, does come along. And like it's up to people whether or not they want to care about those people or not care about them.
Yeah, if you're concerned about your health, then you're not going to be one of those people at the event. If you're caring about the sport and you want to see some type of progress, we've talked about my love for overseas soccer, football. All of these countries are starting to figure out that we've got to put it into the customers or the fans' hands.
Yep. We're at that point now.
It's been a year. Let's figure it out.
Like I've
let's
seen
figure out how we move
Australia.
forward.
I've seen festivals that are pretty big in like Australia, and I know the rate's different everywhere else. It's
Different
certainly
time zones too.
That's a big difference in COVID, I've heard.
Yeah.
I would certainly say though it's not going to hinder my live viewing experience.
No.
I may see a time though, a year from now, say, when everything is relatively back to some semblance of what we remember as normal. I think we're going to be nostalgic for what the empty arena era is. And I think over the next year, we're still going to have some empty arenas because they're not going to go to Florida every week.
Yeah, and
let's be realistic.
They're not going to be able to do that across the board. But I am glad that you mentioned that because we are going to miss an element of being able to hear what fighters are saying, being able to hear in depth what the coaching responses are to a certain scenario situation.
The stadium holding 15,000 fans too, it's like... it kind of reminds me of, do you remember like the old Tufts? Not Tufts, the old, when they used to fight in one of the casinos, and it was like you could basically see the walls on the back of the casino. Like it was like the Ultimate Fighter finales were always held there. It was like Caesar's Palace or something.
Yeah.
I
mean, you remember WCW used to do like outdoor events all the time, and it used to be pretty awesome.
I think it's gonna be kind of cool seeing like a smaller venue for MMA. Fans are going to be a lot closer. I wonder what price of tickets looks like. How star-studded do you think that's going to be?
I think the who's who are probably going to be there because it's going to be that first moment. It's probably going to be like a red carpet moment. You're going to want to see who's taking the risk to go out to these events.
You've got the BMF coming back too. I mean, sadly, the first fight wasn't that exciting.
Masvidal brings out the wild people. Let's not forget.
Florida brings out the wild.
I mean, he's at some point's been called the king of Florida. I mean, the guy won Donald Trump the entire state, for God's sake.
Yeah. You're like 1/7 Floridian, Matt.
Unfortunately, I've drunk the water.
Yeah. That's gross. You've drank, real quick, Matt's drank water in Florida and in New York. So I don't think
I've drank water in Arizona, and there's not much over there. Yeah. So I've been
responsible
everywhere.
for a drought, were you?
Well,
let's get on to the other fights that were announced, though.
Beniel Dariush, Tony Ferguson.
We got that one on the board. That should be an exciting fight. Props to Dariush. I think he handled his last fight in the call out post last fight. Got him enough waves. It wasn't a call out. I think he gave props to his And he said like another fighter should get a fight.
It was a graceful bow to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
He was praising someone else, and in and of itself, he got some shine himself.
I think he has really looked good the last few fights. He's a guy who earlier in his career, I think, had a lot of ups and downs. He would look really great, but then he would lose some of those next level matchups. This is another shot for him to crack the top 5. Ferguson's on the way down. I think the interesting thing in both of the fights,
you better take it easy, buddy.
I'm sorry, it's the truth.
That's aggressive.
Here's the paradox. I would just say, right? It's like
Christ.
Both of these fights that we're going to talk about. So I'll jump the shark a little bit. Gaethje Chandler, right? So we got that announced as well. There's a TBD on that. Dariush Ferguson's happening at UFC 262. Excuse me, May 15th. Both of those fights feature very interesting dynamics where Dariush and Chandler are kind of upswinging, right? Yep. They're breaking into the top 5.
If this were a stock, you would say you'd be buying in on those guys right now.
Ferguson and Gaethje. Gaethje not hurt as bad because Khabib is going to maul everybody,
watch
right?
What you say, buddy.
But he got taken out in 2 rounds. And I think the wrestling that got, for a guy like Chandler, who is a great wrestler, like I think that's a tough thing to be like, hey, that you kind of got exposed, that you don't try to wrestle. You should probably go back to like your roots and get a little better at that.
I don't disagree with you entirely, but I do think that Justin Gaethje does propose a certain size advantage against Michael Chandler. That does play a huge... You can't compare anybody to Khabib. I'm
saying Dan Hooker had a big size thing over Chandler. I'm sure his whole career they've had.
Dan Hooker and Justin Gaethje, again, to me, 2 different levels to this game. And I do think when we look at Justin Gaethje versus Chandler, Chandler's gas tank is fantastic, and we've seen what he's been able to do really early in fights and how he can really drag you into deep waters. Justin Gaethje, after the realization that if he's going to win a title, he's got to be able to go into those deep waters and not match the level of Khabib, but at least be able to get pretty close. You got to think that this is a great opportunity for him to bounce back.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I kind of get the feeling that you're going with the old guns here and that you're really excited to see Ferguson get back onto his winning ways, whereas I, on the other hand, am not quite as sold.
I don't think it's fair to say that he's done. I think he still has a lot to offer, still very young in his career.
Both of them... Both Gaethje and Ferguson have that going. Ferguson, I am a little more concerned. Did you see the picture that came out? I saw it posted this week, and it was like him. I forget which fight it was in the lead up. Maybe it was like one of the Khabib fights where they were almost there, and it was like side by side. No, it was definitely not Khabib. It was like one where he was weighing in, and it's like, damn, like Tony Ferguson's aged a lot in the past 2 years, and you're like, damn, he has.
Okay.
I mean, he's taken a couple ass whoopings now, right?
Yeah.
And is he not turning it around a little fast?
Yeah, that's always my concern with some of these guys. They talk about how hell-bent these guys are in getting in there and fighting anybody. For a guy at Tony Ferguson, I thought we were past that. You know, I thought we were at the point where it's like, let's fight these big fights. Let's make some money. And if we do get to an opportunity where we can take a title shot and really make a splash in this pool, let's do it. I'm really just kind of questioning their choices for fights right now.
Last thing before we get out of this topic here. How do you feel about Tony Ferguson? 2 things. This is a twofold question. How do you feel about Tony Ferguson practicing with at Wildcard Boxing with, give me the name, help me.
Freddie Roach.
Freddie Roach, thank you. How do you feel about that? Because you're our boxing expert. And in turn, how do you feel about Ben Askren also training there? Is Freddie Roach a whore?
That's not a nice thing to say about Freddie Roach.
He's a nice guy.
I will flip that. I will flip that because what I will say is this is where I get a little bit nervous for MMA fighters is when they start reaching out to the legendary coach that is Freddie Roach. And I like the way that I made that rhyme.
It's dope rhyme.
Why
poet you didn't know.
Why are we going out and getting a coach who, for all respect and intents and purposes, is at the end of his career? He's not training. He's not the head trainer for a lot of the big names that we're seeing in boxing right now. He's not, he does jump into the gym occasionally with Canelo for photo ops, things like that, but he's not a big name in the sport anymore. So when I see these MMA guys, especially guys who are coming off of tough losses where they kind of got outstruck, what is boxing, and Conor McGregor is the greatest example of this, what is boxing going to do for you that is going to improve your style in MMA? Is Freddie Roach going to teach you how to plant your feet and check a kick? Is he going to teach you how switching to your dominant hand for a jab in MMA makes way more sense than it ever did in boxing? Maybe.
Yeah.
But is he going to showcase how to fully utilize those skills in time enough for you to be able to adapt? And if you're Tony Ferguson, you're taking fights like they're left and right. you need at least a year with this skill set before you can start making any changes to your overall game.
So I the one counter with the Tony Ferguson thing I would say is he's so far in his career now that I think you can do little fun things like this maybe to freshen up your training. He's also a guy who's always been outside of the box. I also look at a guy like Ben Askren and say, like, to what your point is, I agree. But do you think for Ben Askren, where he's not going to be a boxer, this isn't a long-term thing for him, but if he is going to be doing the actual sport of boxing. And if Freddie Roach can impart one or two things that resonate with Ben Askren on not being a great fundamental boxer, but being able to work in the boxing ring, do you think that's beneficial for him? I understand the MMA arguments, and I actually think you're right. Neither one of us are fucking experts in the physical aspect, right? We've seen enough of this, though, to say that like the footwork that you see in boxing, for the most part, doesn't translate. I think I'd like to see more MMA. You know how, and I guess Dan Hardy talks about this a lot, how the angles on cages don't add up to the same way it does in boxing.
Yep.
But I love like Tyson Fury, we're going to get into him, right? I love when he gets pushed into the corner.
We're selling out right now.
And he's able to turn in and get the guy into the corner. Like,
he's got amazing movement.
I think some of that could do in MMA against the cage and maybe learn how to like improve some stuff, but it doesn't translate.
You're making a perfect point because you're talking a lot of things that are evolutionary MMA, original boxing, like movement and being able to get out of tight corners. That's boxing 101.
Yeah.
You want to be able to put somebody on the ropes, enforce your game plan, and take the least amount of damage. Ideally, that's what you'd like to do. When we look at MMA, you and I can speak to this a little bit more effectively. We may not be physically stout to be able to speak about this, but we've witnessed one of the greatest rises in MMA history translate over to boxing.
In some facet.
Yeah. In some facet. Okay. Our champion went over to boxing and fought the greatest boxer of all time.
And was, in some respects, competitive. Yes.
Lasted 10 rounds.
Yeah.
Whether Floyd allowed him to last 10 rounds or not,
that's the tough part that will always be like, but on paper, you are. On paper, nobody can argue with
he lasted 10 rounds, and when he came back, his striking was never the same.
Mm-hmm.
Hands down, I can tell you that I've witnessed that, and I can tell you that the movements, everything is going to be calculated differently. Why are you going to get one of the most old school boxing coaches out there who is not really evolving his game at all?
No.
What is the benefit? For Ben, it does make sense because he's going into a boxing match against Jake Paul. But for Ben, really all you're getting is, oh, am I doing it correctly? Does my technique look sound?
He might be able to give some I think that from a psychology standpoint with boxing, though, Freddie has seen enough guys who thought they were boxers like Jake Paul to sit there with Ben Askren and be like, hey, but you're a real fighter. Know that this kid maybe from the few rounds I've watched him box, he's gonna gas himself out by round 3 or round 4.
That's a really
some
good
of that
point. Yeah.
stuff. You know, I think like deductively there is some knowledge to take from Freddie Roach there. I do agree again though on the rest of it. In the things you brought up a really good point earlier about like, you know, using your dominant hand to jab and stuff like that. There are things from boxing that unfortunately have not translated enough. Body work. We talk about body work all the time. Like the body punching has not translated the way in MMA that it should. Whenever anybody does put a concerted effort to the body, every announcer is like, I love to see it. Yeah. We need more of that. Blah, blah, blah.
And nobody takes note.
No. And maybe it's just harder than it looks. You know, some guys, I think like Nick Diaz was very far ahead of his time. Nick Diaz had some of the best boxing to the body.
You're talking fantastic cage movement.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's fair because he had no ability to cut it. He was very like, if you stayed in front of him, he was going to do what you want.
Let me reiterate his back to the cage.
Sure.
Amazing back to the cage movement. If you look at his fight against Paul Daly, where they're just rock'em sock'em robots, but his ability to move and kind of dictate where Paul was standing throughout that entire fight made the difference. And I think you mentioned that a little bit with Tyson.
When he gets him into the boxing range that he wants him in, he's able to keep him there with wide punches that navigate them where they want to be. But yeah, that's one of the guys that I look at earlier in MMA that like really focused body punching. I would love to see more of that stuff translate. But you know, let's get into real punching, right, Matt?
Yeah, I don't discount MMA as not real punching.
I'm saying like certain techniques that we just haven't seen translate.
Let's talk about a game that Freddie Roach knows a lot more than, let's say, we do. A big fight's been recently announced, and this was one that as soon as I looked at my phone and I saw your name, I was like, I already know what he's going to talk to me about. And that is that Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, the kingpins of heavyweight boxing, have finally signed on, not for one fight, Lenny. We got a 2-part series on this baby with a guaranteed rematch.
Is that mandatory in major boxing matches? Because Gennady Golovkin, right? That happened. Wilder, Fury.
Yeah.
That also happened. Was that also the case in Joshua versus the
Ruiz,
guy who looks like
Andy
me?
Ruiz.
Yeah,
Yep. So there is always an automatic rematch clause if the champion loses. A lot of people, it doesn't get as advertised as much if you have an A side and a B side, because you don't want to say, hey, if Andy Ruiz knocks out Anthony Joshua, it's all right because he's going to rematch him. Nobody wanted to put that out there, but the reality was that Andy Ruiz knocked out Anthony Joshua. Yeah. And now we've got to talk about him going to make up for that. So that has been something that's been extremely popular in championship fights, but we're just now hearing about it a little bit more when we start to see some of these big names.
So as I said earlier, you're our resident boxing expert. How important is it to unify the heavyweight title? How much does that mean in boxing? Because there's a million championships. How important is it to have a unified? Does it matter?
It does matter because heavyweight is the baddest man on the planet. It always has been since the days of Ali Frazier, right? When we think about Foreman Ali, Tyson versus Holyfield. When you talk about unifying and being the lineal champion, that means that there's no one out there that has a claim to your throne, right? We laugh at boxing a lot just for the fact that you can't take any of these belts serious. But when a guy owns all of them, there's no more conversation about who else is the number one guy.
Now, and thank you for that. Would he then be, if he wins both, if you unify, either guy unifies the title, when they defend, are they defending all of the belts, or are they going to be able to defend the Ring Magazine championship and then the Fire of Terra Crown champion? That's not a real one.
It's very close though. You're not far off.
Okay.
It gets to murky waters once we start talking about lineal championship defenses, because that really just depends on how good your agent and your promoter is. If you're the challenger, to be able to get all of those belts.
Well, so when you say the promoter, do different with these belts? Because I know with boxing, it's you're signed to certain networks. Are these belts tied to certain networks so then it becomes a conflict when you want to have them all defended?
Officially, no. But when we talk about unofficial rankings, when we talk about belts being able to swap, if you've got a guy who's the 3-belt champion and he's locked to Showtime or he's locked into DAZN,
he's only going to fight other.
He's only going to fight other people who are locked into that promoter,
or big enough that can justify the money that'll have to be co-promoted.
Exactly, and that's where you're hoping for a situation like this. If you're either one of these fighters, you're hoping to get into Teofimo Lopez territory. Okay. Where we talked about Teofimo Lopez, who beat the pound-for-pound number one Vasyl Lomachenko.
Oh.
Come on, baby. Come on. I figured I'd get you back in there. He won those all 4 titles. He became the lineal champion at lightweight, and now he holds all the cards as far as how much money he's going to be able to make and which promotion is going to be able to come in and fend for the belt. It's a little bit harder with these two guys because Fury is with ESPN and Anthony Joshua, for all intents and purposes, with Eddie Hearn and Showtime.
And everybody hates him.
And I don't like to use that word, but not a lot of people are fond of him.
Okay.
It does create a barrier where it is good that we got these 2 fights, because now we're guaranteed no matter what BS happens afterwards, promoter stuff aside, we're going to be able to see this fight happen.
So my final 2 things here. I want to throw a crazy proposition out to you.
Throw it out.
Okay, like a premonition of the future here. So we get through the next 2 fights, and hypothetically speaking, because I know the answer for one of these guys, but if Tyson Fury was to win both championships, or unify the belts and win both fights, could you foresee a world where he is the only person in boxing who is willing to come to the UFC? I sound like a fucking idiot.
Sound like a cash.
So to come to the UFC and face a Stipe Miocic in a UFC cage, the same way that Conor went to a boxing.
Yeah, I think
he's the only person. I just think that he's the only person in my mind is crazy enough.
Well, so you say crazy enough, but Tyson Fury is the only guy who's really got a grip on what this whole thing is to him. He knows he's got the love of the fans. He's been on one of the greatest journeys that we've ever heard of in sports industry. And when you talk about a guy like Tyson Fury, if there's nothing left for him to do, but he's got all this praise and all this clamor to want to do more, it's a no-brainer.
This dude has hinted at an MMA career. Yeah. We've seen him train with Darren Till. He is going to be, if he wins these both fights back-to-back, he's the biggest draw in boxing, right?
He's already... People say Canelo is the biggest draw in boxing.
Possibly. I don't, and I was a genuine question, and I don't actually have an issue with it either.
Man, I would tell you it's really close.
Yeah.
I would tell you it's very close. And Tyson,
on the back end of winning 2 fights over Anthony Joshua and in the battle for Europe, basically, right?
man,
Like,
and again, we talked about fans being brought back into Jacksonville for UFC 262.
mm-hmm.
This is a huge opportunity for boxing.
261.
261, sorry. This is a huge opportunity for boxing to kind of take advantage of something that's going to be happening in the UK pretty soon. Fans are being let back into those big stadiums.
Yeah.
You've got 2 kingpins of the UK, guys who are going to be known worldwide, but you have an 80 to 90,000 seat stadium in Wembley that you're going to be able to fill up with fans and have these 2 guys put on a classic fight. It's a huge opportunity for them.
That sounds insanely exciting. I think that where else would Fury go after this? Like, there's no other names in boxing. He's beat Deontay Wilder, right? Maybe you run that back. He would beat, at this point, he could have beat Joshua twice. I just think the only way you build that next level is you come to MMA. Because I don't see, like, Stipe's not going to beat this man in a boxing ring,
so
right?
I have to ask you the tough question. Is my guy Tyson Fury wins it all, and it's only left for him to come in here and sign the dotted line. But Dana White's got to put somebody out there that's going to make sense.
Well,
Who's that guy?
Like I said, well, ideally, I think Stipe makes the most sense because I think Stipe is the most competitive. I think Stipe physically matches up well. And Stipe is the consensus greatest heavyweight of all time in our sport.
Yeah, you
right?
Go. Okay.
Him or Fedor are debatable, but in modern era MMA,
I think you say it's debatable, but I think we've all established that Stipe is the legitimate number 1 heavyweight.
So we would also have the first unified boxing champion in how long?
Don't quote me on that.
You know what I mean? Like,
years,
but like
sure.
It's been forever. So I think the storylines there match up so well.
Yeah.
Now, if John Jones finds his way into beating Stipe Miocic, or if Francis Ngannou, now that's the catch here, right? It could go to the boxing ring if it's Francis Ngannou, and it would look a lot like Wilder.
Yeah.
But it would be scary for a round.
It would be scary just because I think hands down we do know that Francis Ngannou has got maybe 75, maybe 80 pounds on Deontay Wilder. If he lands a shot on Tyson Fury, I don't think Tyson gets up Undertaker style.
No.
But then we're also talking boxing. Then we're also talking skills.
He's got to hit him.
And there are very few people that in a phone booth could hit Tyson Fury.
Yeah.
Let alone a very large.
So that's where I think that like the strategy of both Jones and Stipe could present some interesting issues in an MMA ring. I don't think in a cage.
I know what you mean.
I don't think in a boxing ring that anybody necessarily poses a threat, and that's why I wouldn't want to see it. No. It just seemed interesting to me. The last thing I'll ask before we get out of here. Fight's not even got a date yet. Nothing. We're not going to give a real opinion, but just
it is official though.
But from just today,
yep.
If you had to kind of put an early thought, who do you got?
I've got Tyson Fury.
Me too.
Joshua's
too chinny, right?
Love Anthony Joshua, but has never been good at not getting hit. Yeah. He has made his career on being able to come back. His biggest fight to date, Vladimir Klitschko, he gets dropped by Vladimir Klitschko very early on in the fight, comes back, storms back, beats the greatest heavyweight of all time. Tyson Fury has shown that he can get hit and it's not going to keep him down. And not only is it going to not keep him down, he's going to get better, which is scary for Anthony Joshua.
Man, I am excited for this. I'm not as nearly in tune to the boxing world as you are. This is a fight.
But that's why you've got me, baby.
Yes, sir. We're yin and yang. So,
but if we had to throw this on the taste test,
this is a fucking porterhouse, baby.
Oh yeah, baby.
This is it. This is my most anticipated of all the fights we talked about on here. I want to see this boxing matchup. Tyson Fury, to me, from like competitively watching his boxing matches, I think have been must see. At least the most recent ones. I mean, I can't talk about his whole career, but most recently, I think that he has been must see.
No, if you're looking for a plethora of skills and just how a big man can move in the ring, very few people do it as good as Tyson Fury.
Exactly.
So that's the porterhouse of our rankings. Let me throw Jorge Masvidal versus Kamaru Usman 2 at you. How you feeling about that one?
It's probably like a piece of cake, you know. Like
you feeling cakey about that?
It's probably a little cupcake.
I'll be honest with you, my brother. That's just chips on a deck for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me,
chips. Okay.
I am excited to see it, but that one's just chips.
Okay.
Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler.
I think I'm about even on across the board on these because I think these are all exciting fights. So I'm going cupcakes all around.
Going
it's like one of
cupcakes
those
all
little. So
around?
when you go to like your local grocery store and they have those little packs of the mini cupcakes and there's
You can't go wrong.
there's like 6 of them. And they're little bite-sized guys. That's I have a 6-pack of those little frosted
I just hope
goodies.
that you're taking off the wrapper before you're popping those in your mouth.
No, those aren't edible.
No,
Oh,
no.
shit.
I don't think they're biodegradable, and that would explain a lot of why you've been backed up lately.
Mm-hmm.
But so I will agree with you, man. I think across the board, I'm cake on the rest of these, and it's been great for us to just dive into these. But we'll for sure have some official picks as we get closer to those events.
Yeah, we'll give real breakdowns when the time comes. Hit you with a few tails of the tape for those. As I said earlier in the episode, though, we're at the end here. I know you had to have liked it.
If you made it this far,
this was good. This was good stuff.
this was a porterhouse in of itself.
Yes, yeah. Well, we shouldn't go around ranking ourselves.
I know.
Uh,
But nobody else is ranking us, so I'm fucking doing it.
but seriously, please down below, hit us with a like, hit us with a subscription. Find us on Instagram at For Those With Good Taste. Check us out on Twitter at Good Taste Live. We promise we will tweet there eventually.
Yeah, we got somebody new running our Twitter now.
Yeah,
and he is relentless.
Turning it up,
He
baby.
is relentless.
Memes galore, hopefully. And until next week, guys, and I'm sure they'll give us some interesting things. We didn't even give a Holland pick. He's going to win.
Yeah, do we really need to?
No, Kevin
he's about to
Holland's-
make him his
Kevin Holland,
son.
Put your money on Kevin Holland. And until next week, guys.
You're all my children. We're out of here,
Stephen A.
guys.
Smith. See you later. Peace.
For those with good taste.